when you kind of look at players that are under 25 and you look at a guy like Cade Cunningham, do you believe he's going to be in those conversations to where he's going to be talked about in all-star selections? He's going to be talked about as possibly a dark horse for MVP. Do you think Cade Cunningham could have that type of impact over the next couple of seasons in the NBA?
Okay, so and we have to understand what we're watching here with Anthony Edwards. There is levels, okay? Yeah. Anthony Edwards is already arguably the face of the NBA. Well, I mean, I know he's not playing well, at least the last couple of games, but at least for Anthony Edwards this postseason in general, this man is really making a name for himself. And look at what he's done to this franchise with the Timberwolves, okay? That is like, to me, that is like the definition of a number one. He was a number one overall pick, just like Cade, but like someone that can turn everything around. Yeah, add talent around him. I mean, you have Jay McDaniels, one of the best perimeter defenders. You have Cat, you have Gobert. You have a good coach too, and you have a surrounding cast. Like that's what happens. Okay, I don't think Cade is going to be Anthony Edwards. Okay, and that's okay. But what I do think Cade can be is an all-star. I think he can lead your team to the playoffs. Is he a number one? Is he a number two? I don't think it's fair right now because you got to look at Cade's game. I think now you're seeing his ability to score at all three levels. And there's the health factor, staying healthy, which I think is a legitimate question. If you have questions about his ability to stay healthy, that's fair. I think his career is a little too, I want more of a sample size. I mean, he missed an entire season. He missed some games this year, and there's the vegan stuff that people say. But when you look at his talent, okay, he needs shooting. It's very clear with how he plays. I think he's not a bad shooter. I think he improved this season, at least with his jump shot. And I do think for his career, and you look at his development, a dude who can get you 22, 4 and 7 and have decent percentages. I know the turnovers were a big thing, but again, you got to look at the surrounding cast. Like this league, man, you can't just draft Cade and everything changes for you. Like there's only a handful of Anthony Edwards, Luka Doncic's, who wasn't even taken number one, by the way. But like Cade is a very specific type of player. He needs help, like he does. But I think if you get Cade either number one or number two, you're getting a true running mate who's also an all-star, then you'll start to see what Cade can be. I think at this time, to determine whether he's a franchise player or not, from what I've seen, yeah, you build around that guy. He's one of the most talented players, at least the most talented player we've seen in quite some time here in Detroit that's been drafted. So that's already an argument. But the other argument is like, what are you going to trade Cade and try to find another Cade? Like what's the argument here? I think Cade has all the tools to be an all-star, MVP, and so there's only a handful of guys that are. I mean, Luka doesn't even have an MVP, which is crazy. He's an MVP to me. But in terms of being an all-star, in terms of being, can he make an all-NBA team? Potentially. There's a lot of talent. I think it's the deepest league that we've seen in quite some time as time goes on. But I just think for building around him correctly, the Pistons have not been able to do that. So they need to be able to look at Cade, understand what his skill sets are, understand what his strengths are, and give this man as much spacing as possible and give him a running mate who can score the basketball and take pressure. He is on the worst team in basketball. He's getting double teamed consistently, and it's hard for him as it is to create offense when there's not offense that's feeding off what he can do. Right, you're like trying to create shots for players that can't knock shots down. I mean, look at what Fontecchio did, not just for the Pistons, but for Cade. To get a guy like that, who is a high volume, a great percentage 3-point shooter who can space the floor, look at how it affected Cade. I mean, and I hate doing this because it's always what ifs, but you put Cade on any other competent organization or competent roster that's built correctly, and then you'll see him flourish. I think what he's been given in Detroit, what he's had to work with, I think he's done more than what I've expected. Besides staying, the not being healthy is a concern. I get that. But everything else to me, Anthony, checks. I'm cool with Cade. To me, he's a franchise player. You keep him around long term, and you just build around him correctly. And the Pistons have not been able to do that. I blame Troy for that. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, yeah, Cade is, I think this is fair, ranked as one of the best up-and-coming players, and what he can provide for any basketball team. Dude, any franchise would love this. Will love this man. I'm thankful he's in Detroit. I hope he doesn't leave.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to sign that contract extension this summer. I'm just warning people now. It's going to be over $200 million. You're going to get the Woj tweet in a couple of months. He's going to sign it. He's going to be here for the foreseeable future. What I will say is if Cade and Anthony Edwards switch places, I think you would see the type of player that Cade could possibly be. And a lot of people have mentioned, Anthony Edwards has Cat. He has Rudy Gobert. He has Jaden McDaniels. He has a competent coach. He has, a vet like they have vets like Mike Conley.
Yep.
Cade doesn't have any of that. Cade doesn't, like, the second best player on the Detroit Pistons right now. I mean, you can have a debate with that, but I think in terms of just pure offense, it's Fontecchio. And that's not saying anything bad about Fontecchio. Fontecchio is a hell of a player, but
right.
The best player Cade has ever played with is Jeremy Grant. And Jeremy Grant is like a third or fourth option on a good team, right? You have to build around him before you evaluate him. I know I see a ton of saw it on 97 won the ticket this week saying, should the Pistons trade Cade Cunningham? Should the Tigers trade Tarek Skubal? Like, what are we doing? You just want Detroit fans to be miserable for the rest of their lives? You build around these franchise players that you draft, and you can evaluate and see what they need. What we saw this year is Cade Cunningham needs proper NBA spacing. Yes. That's all he needs. You got Fontecchio, and you saw the offense open up immediately. We didn't really get to see too much of Quentin Grimes, but I think Quentin Grimes could kind of play that Danny Green type of role in Detroit from the San Antonio Spurs from a few years ago. Yep. Another 3-and-D guy. Like, you get him proper 3-and-D wings, you get him more spacing so the lane isn't clogged 24/7. Pistons are going to win more than 14 games. I guarantee you guys that. This is a guy that you build around. This is a guy that's extremely easy to build around, but our franchise has decided to draft over fit. And then they're just going for potential and best player available. They don't really care if it fits or not, which I don't necessarily agree with. You don't use free agency whatsoever. Like, trade for Joe Harris, came off a serious calf injury, and he thought he was going to, turn back time and turn into like this 15-point per game 3-point sniper. Like, I don't even know, Jeff. It's just, it's not hard to build around him. I don't get it.
Well, to address the trade Cade stuff from local media, to me, that's just yapping at this point. You're just kind of, it's this time of the year. Let's just talk to talk. And in my opinion, waste airtime. Like, I don't think trading Cade, there's not much of an argument behind it, except he's your best asset. Trade him. That, to me, does not make any sense. I think you nailed all the points you just laid out. I think it's well put. I think most Pistons fans agree that he has all the tools, but you just haven't been able to. You nailed it with the point of how do you evaluate a player when the roster isn't even up to par? Not just at a decent level. It's not even up to that level. There's nothing's right with how, when you look at a player like Cade, okay, he's 6'6", 6'7", he can he can score at all three levels. He's a great playmaker. He's a slower paced player, but I think that type of game translates in the postseason. Like, there's a lot of things you do like with Cade. But then you look around, and like you said, you're like, the second best player arguably on this team is a guy they acquired at the deadline, who on most teams would be probably a sixth man on good teams, or potentially start, but not be your first, second, or third option. Like, that, to me, is concerning. And I think it speaks more to the Pistons than it does Cade. I think there's more pressure on the Pistons to build this thing around Cade, because you're right, he's going to sign the extension because the NBA incentivizes players to sign that extension. But to keep this man in Detroit, I'm talking long term, not just signing the extension. The pressures, to me, is on the Pistons more than it is on Cade to prove he's a franchise player. Like, get him talent, get to the postseason, and then we can evaluate players. Just like Anthony Edwards has been, his stock has risen now that he's been in the postseason making plays. You can't even evaluate Cade because the team isn't even close to being a playoff team. And I think the blame is there's a lot of things you can point to than just Cade Cunningham. Like, I think we just have to be honest. He's not a revolution. He's not a type of prospect that's going to revolutionize a franchise, but he's a damn good player. You look at what he did his rookie year, post All-Star break, that team was almost 500. mean, we got to be realistic here. And that was with Dwayne Casey and Jeremy Grant. But that team was almost 500 after the All-Star break. Like, what went wrong from that point on? That's what you have to ask yourself, because the 14-win stuff, and I know last year he was out, but that is not – you look at a lot of things other than Cade Cunningham. Like, we agree 100%.
Yeah, I mean, they built a team that wasn't good enough to compete for the play-in, but bad enough to get a top 5 pick again. Like, I think that's been the goal. It's been the goal for the past 4 years. Just get teams that can get you into top 5 lottery odds. And I was listening to a really old Stan Van Gundy interview with Mike Folletti, and Stan's like, it's not that hard to build a shitty team. Anyone can do it. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. He's like, what's hard is building a competitive team because you don't know. And I think that's what the Pistons have done the past 4 years, is just build a shitty ass team and just say, hey, you know, we're tanking, we're restoring you guys. It's not a rebuild, it's a restoration. Like, stop with the PR bullshit.
Yeah, no, it's been far from that. It's been, like you said, there's two sides. There's one side where it's like, okay, I like the collection of young talent, but then there's the other side where it's like, where has this thing gone? It's actually gotten worse, which is hard to do. It seems like they're doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result, which to me is literally the definition of insanity. I mean, you're like, maybe we try it the same way and we get a different result. It's like, no, this is why you're where you are as an organization.